I never thought a simple text message could make my hands tremble like that. The message glowed on my phone's screen, burning itself into my mind. You won't be joining us on the family cruise. My wife would prefer to keep it just family. The words came from my son. My only child. The same son I had gifted a fully paid house to just months ago. The house I spent sleepless nights securing for him. The house I poured my savings into, telling myself it was a gift of love, a foundation for his growing family. And now, I wasn't family enough for their vacation. I stared at those cold words as my chest tightened. The blood roared in my ears. My hands, stiff and ice-cold, slowly typed my response. Okay, that was all I said. One word. But it carried the weight of 1,000 heartbreaks. Because that one word meant, yes, I see now. Yes, I've been used. Yes, you think I'm disposable. But even as I pressed send, my mind was screaming. So I'm good enough to buy your house, but not good enough to sit at your dinner table? Not good enough to ride your damn cruise ship? My heart pounded like war drums. My breathing grew shallow. But my face stayed still. Calm. Almost detached. Because something in me died that moment. The part that had always swallowed pride, made excuses, smiled through quiet humiliations, it died. And something else stirred. The phone buzzed again. A follow-up message from Emily, my daughter-in-law. Polite, of course. Always polite. But cold. I hope you understand. It's just simpler for everyone this way. Simpler. Of course it's simpler, Emily. Simpler now that you have the house. Simpler now that you've secured your future. I set the phone down. My hands were still trembling. But I wasn't crying. Not anymore. Because in that moment, a new part of me woke up. The part that had been too soft for too long. The part that would no longer be humiliated. They thought I was going to accept this. They thought wrong. The silence in my kitchen that morning. It wasn't peaceful. It was loud. The sun crawled slowly across the tiled floor, touching the wooden chairs, the countertops I once picked with care. The curtains I sewed by hand. All for them. For Matthew and Emily. For the family I thought I was building. Now the house felt like a museum of bad choices. On the wall, photographs. Disney when Matthew was little. Cancun when Emily first joined the family. That Christmas cabin trip. I paid for that one entirely. My gift to them, I told myself. Always giving. Always explaining their silences away. I thought back to the housewarming last spring. The house I bought. Fully paid. No mortgage. No debt. Emily had clasped my hands back then, tears in her eyes. Olivia, you didn't have to do this. We're so grateful. You'll always have a room here. You know that. And I believed her. Of course I did. Because mothers believe. I remembered repainting their bedroom myself. Choosing lavender because Emily said it was soothing. Assembling furniture alone in my garage. Every lamp, every throw blanket, chosen carefully. Lovingly. It had been easier to stay busy. To pretend their distance was stress, not strategy. But it wasn't. The truth sat heavy now. I had made myself too useful. So useful that they forgot I was a person. To them, I was a resource. A purse. And once the purse was emptied, they no longer needed the woman attached to it. The next morning, I couldn't take the silence. I called Martha. She arrived within the hour. No questions. That's the thing about old friends, they know when words aren't needed. She walked through my door, set her purse on the table, and said simply, "Tell me." I slid the phone across the table. She read the message. Her jaw clenched. She shook her head. "They've been planning this, Liv." My voice came out small. I thought it was just Emily. That she got into his head. But Matthew, he's not like this. Martha's hand reached across the table, steady and warm. "Liv, you raised a good boy. But you also raised a boy who never had to struggle. Who always had you picking up the pieces. And Emily, she saw that. She saw what she could mold. She let that sit in the air. You made yourself small for them. And now they're acting like that's where you belong." The words stung. Because they were true. I had canceled my own vacations to babysit their dog. Drained my savings to pay off their loans. Arrived whenever Emily called. Just to help out. Always available. Always obedient. Martha leaned in, voice low. "You need to protect yourself now. Before they take more." I blinked. "Take more? They've already got everything." Martha's eyes narrowed. "Have you checked your accounts? Your name on the house title? On your investments? Olivia, are you still trusting them?" A chill ran through me. My pulse quickened. I hadn't checked anything. Emily handled the online stuff. She said it was easier. For tax reasons. Martha sat back hard. "Liv, you need to log into everything. Today. If anything looks off, we go straight to a lawyer." I swallowed. hands trembling, not with fear, but with realization. The truth formed like ice in my chest. My trust had been weaponized. That night, sleep didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that message. That stupid, heartless text. Emily's rehearsed little smile. Matthew's vacant nod. At 2:17 a.m., I gave up. I sat in the kitchen under the dim lamp, my laptop open. For years, Emily had told me, "It's just easier, Olivia. You shouldn't have to worry about these things." But tonight, my fingers hovered over the login screen with a new kind of focus. I typed in my credentials. The dashboard loaded. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Then I started scrolling. Page by page. Line by line. And there it was. Tiny transfers. Small enough to hide. Labeled home repairs, property taxes, emergency maintenance. But I hadn't authorized any emergency repairs. And they were going to cards, not in my name. Emily's name. She had quietly linked her account. Skimming. Draining. Months. Maybe longer. My stomach turned. This wasn't about a cruise. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was theft. And Matthew? Was he blind? Or did he know? And simply not care? I closed the laptop gently. Sat back in the quiet kitchen. Family photos still hung on the wall. But now they looked like evidence. They never loved me. They loved what I gave. My throat burned, but I didn't cry. Instead, I whispered, "You gambled with my kindness, Emily." And that's when I knew. They thought silence meant surrender. But they forgot. Quiet doesn't mean weak. By morning, I was no longer shaken. I wasn't panicking. Not anymore. The fog had lifted. What remained was cold focus. I called my financial advisor under the guise of a routine check-in. I didn't want to raise any flags, not yet. Not until I knew exactly what I was dealing with. "Of course, Mrs. Gardner," Mr. Whitaker answered cheerfully. He'd managed my accounts for over a decade. "How can I assist you?" "My son and daughter-in-law have been helping with some home expenses," I said evenly. "But I'd like to make sure everything's still structured as we planned." There was a pause while he pulled up the files. Everything appears generally stable," he said, his voice shifting. "Although I do see several recent transfers. Larger than usual. They appear to be for home renovations." I swallowed. "Renovations?" "Yes. Significant ones. Several large amounts, design upgrades, contractor prepayments." My hand gripped the phone tighter. "And who authorized those?" He hesitated. "Technically you did. At least, your authorized representative did." My pulse quickened. "Which representative?" "It appears to be Mrs. Emily Gardner. She's listed under the durable power of attorney. Signed last spring." The room spun. I remembered that day. Emily had smiled, said she'd found a notary to make things easier. She'd poured me tea. Told me not to worry. I thanked Mr. Whitaker, asked him to flag all transactions for personal review from now on. When I hung up, I stared at the walls of my kitchen, the ones I had painted with my own hands. The family photos blurred. I could no longer tell if they were memories or illusions. I walked to the window and looked at the small brass locket that sat on the sill. Richard's locket. He had given it to me after our 30th anniversary. A tiny engraving inside. "For the home we built." He would have seen through this. He always warned me, "Don't let love blind you to control." But I didn't listen. Because I wanted to believe in family. I looked around the house I bought for them. And it hit me. They weren't waiting for me to die. They were erasing me now. By 8:30 a.m., I was waiting at Dalton's office before they even opened the doors. He was surprised but welcomed me in. "Olivia? Everything okay?" I sat across from him, spine straight. "I need to reverse the house gift." His brow rose. "The one you transferred to Matthew and Emily?" "Yes. I want it undone. I want my assets locked. All powers revoked." He was quiet for a long second. Not because he disagreed, but because he knew the weight of what I was asking. "Olivia, this may create tension." I met his eyes. "They've already created it. I've just been too blind to see it." He nodded slowly. "Then we'll proceed. I'll also begin reviewing any financial documents they've processed under your accounts." I leaned in. "Hire an investigator." He paused. "You think it's that serious?" "I don't think," I said flatly. "I know." Dalton's tone changed. "If she's already leveraging your assets, this may go deeper. A paper trail will protect you legally and emotionally." I gave a small, cold smile. "Do it. I'm done reacting." It's time they realized what silence can build. That afternoon, a plain white envelope slid under my front door. Emily's handwriting on the sticky note. "Just sign whenever you're ready, Mom." It'll make everything easier while we're away. The envelope felt heavier than paper. Inside, a neatly prepared stack of documents. On the surface, they looked routine. Estate updates. Minor amendments. But I knew better now. I read every line. And there it was buried in legal jargon. Permanent. Irrevocable. Full power of attorney. Control over my finances. Control over my property. Control over my medical decisions. They weren't waiting to inherit. They were seizing while I still breathed. And Matthew? Did he know? Or did he just enjoy the benefits too much to ask questions? I placed the papers back inside the envelope, untouched. Let them think I hadn't noticed. Let them keep playing chess with a woman who'd already flipped the board. That evening, Martha returned. She sat silently across from me as I laid the envelope on the table. "They think you're still asleep," she said. "Then let's not wake them," I replied. The next morning, the investigator called. "Mrs. Gardner," his voice steady, "you may want to hear this in person. Tell me now. Your daughter-in-law listed the property as collateral for a second mortgage. She began the process last week." I closed the curtains instinctively. Was ownership disclosed truthfully? They presented it as a clear gift transfer. No mention of coercion. The lender noted generous family support. Heat rose in my chest, not rage. Something colder. Sharper. "They're borrowing against my sacrifice," I said. "If you hadn't intervened now, they may have sold the home entirely without your knowledge." I whispered, slow and quiet. "Good. Let's keep them thinking I haven't noticed." We ended the call. I sat in the dim light. The refrigerator's hum. The clock ticking. This was no longer just betrayal. It was theft in progress. And yet, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't confused. I was ready. They had gambled on my silence. They forgot that silence can be a storm. The next few days moved like clockwork. No emotion. No hesitation. Just one deliberate step after another. Every morning, I sat in Dalton's office. He on one side, the investigator on the other. Papers. Timelines. Withdrawals. Signatures. We traced every dollar. We documented every unauthorized transaction. We printed copies of the power of attorney Emily had tricked me into signing. Then tried again with a second draft slipped under my door. I thought I'd feel sick, but the more they uncovered, the more I felt solid. Anchored. Emily had used my retirement fund to pay off her credit card debt. She had funneled money into investment accounts tied to her maiden name. She had even initiated pre-approval for a second mortgage on the house I bought them, while I was still legally on the title. Dalton slid the papers across the table. "Calm. Controlled. This will speak volumes if it goes to court." The investigator nodded. "The cruise was perfect timing. She slipped the last set of documents under your door just before they left. She wanted you powerless before you even realized what she was doing." I breathed slowly. Let it sink in. Greed dressed up as care. That's all it ever was. "They didn't want me gone," I said softly. "They wanted me silenced." Dalton met my eyes. "And they would have had it, Olivia. Most people sign without reading. You didn't." "No," I whispered. "I didn't." That evening, the house felt different. Not because it had changed, but because I had. I walked room to room. The light fixtures Emily insisted on. The curtains she picked. The counters I paid for. The rugs I rolled out. Each piece they demanded. Each upgrade she framed as necessity. They weren't pieces of a home. They were evidence of how far I'd gone to be accepted. How much I'd given to be loved. I paused in front of the empty shelf. The one where their housewarming photo used to sit. I opened the drawer. Pulled it out. Matthew smiling. Emily beaming. I traced Matthew's face. "You thought I was here to serve you." I turned the photo over. Slid it deeper into the drawer. Let it sit in the dark. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was the investigator. They just filed final paperwork with the lender. They're trying to secure the second mortgage. Using the house as leverage. "Do they know yet?" I asked. "No. As far as they know, you're still home. Still quiet." "Good," I said. "Let's keep it that way." By the next morning, everything was ready. Dalton had filed the house reversal. Frozen every joint account. Voided Emily's access. I sat in his office, the documents in front of me. Thick. Heavy. Years of trust and suffering compressed into ink and paper. The notary waited quietly. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. With every signature, I felt a piece of myself returning. One page. Then another. And another. When it was done, Dalton nodded. "The house is legally yours again. Emily's financial access has been revoked. Your accounts are secure. They can't touch anything, Not even your utilities. And if they try to fight it? Dalton's voice sharpened. Then they expose themselves. We've built a complete legal timeline. One that paints a very clear picture. I stood. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt ready. They wanted quiet? Then I would show them how powerful quiet can be. The cruise ship returned 4 days later. I was already there, standing quietly across the street. I parked a block away. 2 moving vans sat in the driveway. A young couple smiled near the front door, chatting with a realtor. They had no idea their happiness was my storm's eye. Matthew and Emily's car pulled in. Tanned. Relaxed. Emily wore sunglasses and confidence like a mask. She stepped out, barking orders at Matthew about mortgage appointments. He was scrolling through his phone, as always. Then they saw the vans. The unfamiliar people. The realtor. Then me. Matthew blinked. Mom! Emily's voice rose. What's going on? Who are these people? The couple walked inside. The door closed behind them. Their door now. I walked forward. Each step slow. Solid. Matthew's voice cracked. Why are there people in our house? Not your house, I said. Not anymore. Emily's eyes flared. You can't do this. We're refinancing. We have contracts. I pulled out the folder. These are the only contracts that matter. I handed it to Matthew. He opened it. Page by page, his face drained of color. The house reversal. The evidence of financial theft. Every transfer. Every forgery. Emily snatched it from his hands. Skimmed. Desperate. None of this will hold up. We were helping. You'll regret this. Helping. I said. I stepped closer. Helping means communication. Trust. Respect. Not linking your credit cards to my account. Not forging power of attorney and slipping it under my door. Emily opened her mouth, but I kept going. You thought I'd sign. Quietly. While you were sipping cocktails on a cruise funded by my retirement. Matthew stepped forward. Mom, we didn't mean. I raised a hand. Stop. My voice was quiet. Firm. Final. You didn't mean to get caught. The silence that followed was sharp. Then I pulled out a second folder. And if you try to take me to court, this becomes public. Emily grabbed it. Inside, copies of every unauthorized withdrawal. Every forged form. Every transfer Emily had processed under my name. Every document she buried in generic language. Fraud. Elder abuse. Financial coercion. She flipped faster. Her breath quickened. Matthew's voice cracked. Emily, what did you do? She spun on him. Don't you dare. You were fine when the money came in. But Matthew just stared at her. His shoulders sagging. I watched them unravel. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was the detonation of a long-hidden truth. I stepped back. I was your mother, Matthew. You made me your target. He whispered. I'm sorry. But it was too late. I opened my bag and pulled out a final copy. If you want to pursue legal action, I said, you'll be walking into this. Emily's hand trembled. You think you've won. This isn't about winning, I said. It's about being free. She laughed bitterly. You'll end up alone. I smiled. Alone is better than being used. Then I turned and walked away. I never looked back. I drove slowly. No destination in mind, just movement. The engine hummed beneath me, smooth, steady. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I had done all of that already. I had cried enough tears to fill that empty house. I had screamed into pillows while no one listened. Now, I was calm. As I wound through quiet neighborhoods, I passed parks I once visited with Matthew when he was a boy. Past the ice cream parlor where he begged for extra sprinkles. The bookstore where I used to save coins to buy him those dinosaur encyclopedias. None of it made me ache now. It just existed. Part of a story I had finally closed. By the time I reached my modest apartment, the sun was dipping low. It wasn't grand. It wasn't furnished with Emily's taste. There were no marble countertops or imported light fixtures. But it was mine. I unlocked the door, stepped into silence. And for the first time in years, it was the right kind of silence. Not the kind that suffocates. Not the kind filled with resentment and unspoken disappointments. This silence was clean. Honest. Mine. I dropped my keys onto the counter and opened the windows. The breeze carried the faint sound of children playing down the street. Real laughter. Innocent. Unfiltered. I stood still and listened. Behind me, the apartment was empty. No hidden agendas. No sticky notes with manipulative instructions. No folders to read twice for traps. Just air. Just space. I walked toward the shelf by the window. There, on the sill, sat Richard's locket. The one he gave me the year we paid off our first home. I picked it up, held it against my chest. He always said, a home is only sacred if the people inside protect each other. I hadn't been protected in a long, long time. But now I was. By me. My phone buzzed. It sat face down on the table. I ignored it. Buzz. Buzz. Curiosity finally nudged me forward. I flipped it over. It was Matthew. Mom, please. Can we talk? This isn't what I wanted. No call. Just a text. Another message came a few seconds later. I'm sorry. Emily got carried away. She pushed me. You know how she is. I never wanted to hurt you. There it was. The bait. Wrapped in guilt. Laced with familiar excuses. My thumb hovered over the screen. But I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because I had finally learned something no one had taught me growing up. You only miss someone when they stop saying yes. I set the phone down, face down again. Let it sit in the dark. Let it wait just like I used to. I walked back to the window. The breeze lifted the curtain ever so slightly. There were no photos on my shelves. No family smiles hiding knives behind their teeth. Just plants. Books. A candle I hadn't lit in years. Tonight I would. I lit it. Watched the flame flicker to life. Its glow danced along the locket's gold edge. I whispered into the quiet room. You were right, Richard. I should have listened sooner. But there was no bitterness in my voice. Just peace. I had spent decades tying my worth to being useful. To being needed. To being included. But being needed isn't the same as being loved. And being included isn't the same as being respected. They loved the version of me that kept giving. That kept forgiving. That kept making excuses for them while they emptied me out. And when there was nothing left to take, they left me off the invite list. Like a broken appliance they'd finally replaced. They called it simpler. I called it freedom. Let them sit in their borrowed chairs. Under their borrowed roof. Shocked that the world shifted beneath their feet. Let Emily scream about contracts. Let Matthew send texts filled with watered-down apologies. Because I was done explaining myself to people who only heard yes. That night I made tea in a chipped mug. The kind Emily said didn't match the aesthetic. I wrapped myself in an old shawl. The one Matthew said made me look tired. And I sat by the window, rocking slowly in the chair I once bought at a garage sale with my last $20, back when I was building everything from nothing. The street lamp outside cast soft golden light across my floor. My fingers curled around the locket. I said one last thing. Not to them. To myself. Quiet doesn't mean weak. And finally, I believed it.